In the summer of 1943, General George S. Patton was the most feared man in the Mediterranean, not just by the Germans, whom he was crushing in Sicily, but often by his own men. Patton was old blood and guts. He believed that war was the supreme test of human character. He believed in willpower. He believed that courage could be forced, like squeezing toothpaste from a tube. But war has another side, a side hidden inside the canvas walls of the evacuation hospitals. Here, there are no speeches about glory, there is only pain. And in this world, the general is not the supreme authority. The doctor is. On August 3rd and August 10th, 1943, these two worlds collided in a way that almost destroyed the U.S. Army's command structure. General Patton walked into a medical tent. He saw a soldier who wasn't bleeding. He saw a soldier who was crying. To Patton, this was a crime. He screamed. He slapped the soldier. And then, in a moment of pure madness, the commanding general of the 7th Army reached for his famous pearl-handled revolver and threatened to execute a private right there in the hospital bed. Most men would have frozen, but the medical officers in that tent didn't salute. They didn't back down. They stood between the general and the patient. They drew a line in the sand, and they launched a secret rebellion that went all the way to Dwight D. Eisenhower, forcing the most powerful general in the world to get on his knees and beg for forgiveness. Hi, I'm Ray. We love stories about generals defeating enemies, but today we are telling the story of the only people who ever defeated General Patton. The doctors, this is the true story of the slapping incidents, the mutiny of the medical corps. Chapter 1. The Pressure Cooker, Sicily, 1943. To understand why a general would lose his mind, we have to look at the environment. Sicily in August 1943 wasn't a vacation, it was a furnace. Temperatures reached 100 degrees Fahrenheit daily. The dust was so thick it choked the engines of trucks. Malaria and dysentery were taking out more soldiers than German bullets. Patton was racing. He was in a personal competition with the British General Bernard Montgomery to see who could reach the city of Messina first. He drove his men relentlessly. Attack, attack, attack. Patton slept 4 hours a night. He was constantly at the front, exposing himself to fire, trying to inspire his troops by sheer force of personality. Patton had a philosophy. He believed that battle fatigue or shell shock was a myth. He called it a fancy name for cowardice. In his diary, he wrote, "It is nothing but a lack of guts. I will not have cowards in my army." To him, a soldier who broke down mentally was stealing rations from a soldier who was fighting. He saw himself as a father disciplining unruly children. But the medical science of 1943 disagreed. Doctors knew that every man has a breaking point. After 20 or 30 days of constant shelling, no sleep, and watching friends die, the human brain simply shuts down. It's a physiological reaction, not a moral failure. The 1st Infantry Division had been fighting since North Africa. They were exhausted. They were fraying at the edges. So, you have an unstoppable force heading toward an immovable object. The crash was inevitable, and it happened at the 15th Evacuation Hospital. Chapter 2. The first victim, Private Kuhl, August 3rd, 1943. General Patton decides to make a surprise visit to the 15th Evac Hospital near Nick. He wants to visit the wounded. This was typical Patton. He could be incredibly tender. He would kneel beside men with missing legs, hold their hands, and pin medals on their pillows. He genuinely loved the warriors. He walked through the tent, commending the men with bandages. Then he stopped. Sitting on a box near the entrance was Private Charles H. Kuhl. Kuhl didn't have a bandage. He didn't have a cast. He just looked slumped, tired, and vacant. Patton approached him. "Soldier, I asked you where you were hurt." Private Kuhl looked up, eyes red. He shrugged. "I guess I just can't take it, sir." He explained that he had no physical wounds, but his nerves were shot. The switch flipped. Witnesses say Patton's face turned purple. The tenderness vanished, replaced by pure, blinding rage. He screamed, "You coward! You yellow bastard! You're not sick." Then, the unthinkable happened. The commanding general of the army raised his gloved hand and slapped the private across the face. Smack, he grabbed Kuhl by the collar and threw him toward the exit. "Don't admit this, son of a bitch," he shouted to the doctors. "I don't want yellow-bellied bastards hiding in my hospitals. You go back to the front lines, or I'll stand you up against a wall and shoot you myself." The tent went silent. The doctors were stunned. To strike an enlisted man is a court-martial offense, even for a general, but Kuhl was just a private. Patton was a god. Who was going to stop him? Patton stormed out. Feeling righteous, he thought he had just slapped the manhood back into the soldier. Later, the doctors examined Kuhl. Turns out, he wasn't just nervous. He had a temperature of 102.2 degrees Fahrenheit. He was suffering from chronic dysentery and malaria. The general had just beaten a sick man. Chapter 3. The gun in the tent, Private Bennett. If it had happened once, it might have been buried. But 7 days later, it happened again. And 'tis time it was violent. Patton visited the 93rd Evacuation Hospital. He was checking on the wounded. He moved from bed to bed, acting the role of the benevolent father. He came across Private Paul G. Bennett, a 21-year-old artilleryman. Bennett was shivering, curled in a fetal position. He was dehydrated and exhausted. His unit had been shelled relentlessly. Patton asked, "What's your trouble, boy?" Bennett whispered, "It's my nerves, sir. I can't stand the shelling anymore." It happened again. Patton exploded. "Your nerves? Hell, you are just a goddamned coward. Shut up that goddamned crying." Patton slapped Bennett so hard his helmet liner flew off and rolled across the dirt floor. Bennett began to sob uncontrollably. This pushed Patton over the edge. He reached for his belt. He pulled out his revolver. He pointed his finger at the doctor, Colonel Donald Carrier. Patton screamed, "I ought to shoot you myself, you whimpering coward. You get him out of here. Send him back to the front. You hear me, Colonel? I won't have these cowards stinking up this place of honor." This is the moment the title of our video refers to. Colonel Carrier was the commanding medical officer. He was not a combat soldier, but he outranked Patton in that tent. According to Medical Corps ethics, the doctor is the supreme commander of the patient's welfare. Carrier stood his ground. He did not obey the order to discharge Bennett immediately. He stepped between the screaming general and the sobbing boy. It was a standoff. A 3-star general with a gun versus a doctor with a stethoscope. Patton, realizing he had gone too far, turned on his heel and stormed out. "Bata se left!" he shouted back. "I meant what I said. Get him out of here!" I want you to pause and think about the courage of those doctors. Reporting a general like Patton in 1943 was dangerous. He was a national hero. He was winning the war. If you report him, you might destroy the morale of the entire army. If you don't report him, you are allowing a tyrant to abuse sick men. What would you have done? Would you have filed the report? Let me know in the comments, and if you value stories of moral courage, subscribe to G.I.Stories. Now, let's see how the doctors fought back. In the summer of 1943, on the sun-scorched island of Sicily, one of America's most brilliant and controversial generals, George Zen Patton, was at the peak of his power. His 7th Army had just achieved a stunning victory, a lightning-fast campaign that cemented his reputation as a military genius. But behind the headlines of triumph, a storm was brewing. A storm that would threaten to end his career and expose the brutal, unseen toll of war on the human mind. This is the story of 2 slaps that echoed around the world, and the quiet, courageous stand taken by a group of medics who dared to defy a legend. It all began on August 3, 1943. Patton, ever the hands-on commander, was visiting the 15th Evacuation Hospital near Nicosia. He moved through the wards, offering words of encouragement to the wounded soldiers. He saw men with missing limbs, severe burns, and grievous injuries. He praised their courage, pinning purple hearts on their pillows. Then, he encountered Private Charles H. Kuhl. Kuhl was sitting on a cot, seemingly physically unharmed. When Patton asked what was wrong, the soldier mumbled, "I guess I can't take it." To Patton, this was an admission of cowardice. He saw a man shirking his duty, while others fought and died. Kuhl was suffering from what was then called shell shock or battle fatigue, what we now know as PTSD. He was running a high fever and was diagnosed with malaria, but in Patton's eyes, he was the general's famous temper exploded. He cursed at Kuhl, called him a coward, and slapped him across the face with his gloves. He then grabbed Kuhl by the collar and physically kicked him out of the tent, ordering the doctors not to readmit him. For most, the story would have ended there, a general losing his temper under the immense pressure of command. But for Patton, it was only the beginning. 1 week later, on August 10th, at the 93rd Evacuation Hospital, it happened again. Patton came across Private Paul G. Bennett, who was hunched over and trembling. When asked what was wrong, Bennett said, "It's my nerves." He burst into tears, saying, "I can't stand the shelling anymore." Patton's reaction was even more volcanic. He called Bennett a yellow-bellied coward and screamed that he would not have such men in his army. He slapped Bennett hard, knocking his helmet liner off. Then, as Bennett sobbed, Patton pulled out his iconic ivory-handled pistol, threatening to shoot him on the spot. He was only stopped when the hospital's commanding officer, Colonel Donald Carrier, physically stepped between them. Patton stormed out, shouting that he wanted the soldiers sent back to the front lines immediately. News of these incidents, especially the second one, spread like wildfire through the medical corps. The doctors and nurses who witnessed the events were horrified. They were healers, dedicated to mending both the physical and psychological wounds of war. Patton's brutal treatment of men they knew were genuinely suffering was a violation of everything they stood for. They saw it not just as an assault on two soldiers, but as an assault on the very practice of military medicine. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The medical personnel didn't just gossip in hushed tones. They acted. The corpsman who had taken down Private Bennett's information filed a formal report. The hospital commander, Colonel Carrier, did the same. Reports from both incidents were sent up the chain of command, eventually landing on the desk of General Omar Bradley. Bradley, a much more reserved and thoughtful commander, knew this was serious. He passed the information to the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower was in a difficult position. Patton was an indispensable battlefield commander, arguably his best tactician for mobile, armored warfare. Losing him would be a massive blow to the war effort. But Eisenhower also knew that such behavior was unacceptable and could destroy morale if it became public knowledge. He wrote a sharp, private letter to Patton, calling his actions despicable and demanding an explanation. Patton, initially defiant, quickly realized the gravity of his situation. He wrote a letter of apology to Eisenhower, expressing his remorse. But Eisenhower demanded more. He ordered Patton to personally apologize to the soldiers he had struck, to the doctors and nurses at the hospitals, and to every division in the 7th Army. For a man as proud as Patton, this was the ultimate humiliation. Over the next week, Patton swallowed his pride. He went back to the hospitals and spoke to the medical staff. He toured his divisions, delivering speeches from the hood of his Jeep. In a series of tense, awkward assemblies, he apologized for his impulsiveness and acknowledged the bravery of all his soldiers, including those suffering from battle fatigue. He never admitted fault in the way we might expect today. But for a 4-star general in 1943, it was an unprecedented act of Meanwhile, a war correspondent named Drew Pearson got wind of the story. He sat on it for months. But finally, in November 1943, he broke the news on his national radio broadcast. The American public was shocked. Congress erupted in debate. Some called for Patton's immediate dismissal, branding him a brute. Others defended him, arguing that in the heat of war, tough measures were necessary. The controversy raged for weeks. Eisenhower stood by his man, but Patton paid a heavy price. He was sidelined, while his peers, like Bradley and Montgomery, went on to lead armies in the pivotal D-Day invasion of Normandy. Patton was left in England as a decoy. He was given command of a Phantom Army, the first U.S. Army group, a brilliant deception designed to fool the Germans into thinking the invasion would come at Patton. The ruse worked perfectly, but for Patton, it was a bitter pill to swallow. He had gone from America's most celebrated field commander to a ghost, all because of 2 slaps. It was the quiet courage of the medical corps that truly stands out in this story. In a rigid military hierarchy where a general's word was law, a group of doctors, nurses, and corpsmen chose to protect their patients. They filed reports, they bore witness, and they refused to let the incident be swept under the rug. Their actions, what some might call a mutiny of the medics, forced the highest levels of command to confront the reality of psychological trauma in warfare. They risked their careers to uphold their duty of care, ensuring that even a general as powerful as Patton was held accountable. Patton would eventually get his command back, leading the Third Army in a legendary and aggressive sweep across France after D-Day, playing a crucial role in winning the war in Europe. But the slapping incidents forever marked his legacy, a permanent stain on an otherwise brilliant military record. The story serves as a powerful reminder. It highlights the immense pressure faced by soldiers and commanders alike, and it shines a light on the evolution of our understanding of mental health in the military. What Patton dismissed as cowardice is now recognized as a legitimate and serious wound of war. The quiet defiance of those medics in Sicily helped pave the way for this change, ensuring that the invisible wounds of combat would no longer be ignored. Their brave stand for their patients proved that true courage isn't always found on the battlefield. Sometimes it's found in a hospital tent, speaking truth to power. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into forgotten moments of history. We'll see you in the next one.